Imagine you are tasked with writing a book, not a short story or a simple essay, but an epic masterpiece spanning over 600 pages, containing over 77,000 words. But there is a catch. You cannot write this book in a quiet room with a computer, an eraser, or editing software. You cannot draft an outline. You cannot go back to chapter 2 to correct a mistake you made while writing chapter 10. Instead, you must dictate this entire book out loud. You must speak it verse by verse, sentence by sentence, to crowds of people over a period of precisely 23 years. Sometimes, you will dictate a sentence while traveling on a camel, in the middle of a war zone. Sometimes, you will dictate a paragraph while sitting in a quiet cave at midnight. Now, imagine that while you are speaking this book randomly over 2 decades, you are secretly keeping a flawless mathematical ledger inside your head. You are counting every single time you say a specific word. You ensure that if you say the word day today, it perfectly aligns with an astronomical calendar 2 decades from now. You ensure that every time you use a word representing a concept, its exact linguistic opposite is spoken the exact same number of times, down to the single digit. If a human attempted this without a computer or a pen, the structural framework would collapse within the first 3 chapters. The human brain cannot track multi-layered mathematical matrices across a 23-year timeline while speaking spontaneously. Yet, 1400 years ago, a man who could neither read nor write stood in the middle of the Arabian desert and delivered a text that does exactly this. Welcome to the exploration of a mathematical matrix so intricate, so flawlessly balanced, that it challenges the very boundaries of human probability. To understand the depth of this linguistic architecture, we must first look at the concept of absolute equilibrium. In the realm of literature, authors use antonyms to create contrast. We contrast light with darkness, life with death, good with evil, but no author in history has ever controlled the frequency of those words to match a perfect mathematical equation. Let us look at the structural core of Islamic theology, the concept of reality. The Quran splits existence into 2 distinct phases. The first is dunya, the immediate, worldly, physical life we are living right now. The second is akhira, the ultimate, eternal afterlife that awaits every soul. When scholars sat down, centuries after the text was compiled, to manually count every single appearance of these 2 words, they stumbled upon an anomaly. The word dunya appears in the text exactly 115 times. And when they counted the word akhira, it did not appear 114 times. It did not appear 116 times. It locked perfectly, beautifully, at exactly 115 times. To a casual observer, this might look like an incredible coincidence, a literary fluke. But as you dig deeper into the text, the coincidences stop behaving like accidents and start behaving like a deliberate, unbreakable law of design. Let us look at the unseen forces of the spiritual realm, the entities of absolute good and the entities of absolute deception. The word for angels is mentioned exactly 88 times across the entire text. The word for devils, exactly 88 times. The concept of life is woven into the text exactly 145 times. The concept of death, exactly 145 times. The word for benefit or profit appears 50 times. The word for corruption or harm appears 50 times. The word for cold appears 4 times. The word for heat appears 4 times. Think about the psychological reality of this. These verses were not revealed all at once in a single book sitting on a desk. They were revealed as organic responses to real-world historical events over 23 years. If the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was speaking from his own mind, he would have had to remember, during a time of intense war or deep personal grief, exactly how many times he had used the word life 12 years prior, in a completely different city, just to make sure he balanced it with the word death in the current moment. Statistically, maintaining this level of symmetrical pairing across dozens of varying concepts over 2 decades is a mathematical impossibility for a spoken orator. But this is merely the surface layer of the grid. When we look at the universe, we see that the Creator organized reality using numbers. The rotation of our planet, the orbit of our moon, and our journey around the sun are all governed by rigid, predictable numerical cycles. We live by these numbers. They form our days, our months, and our years. If the Quran is truly a revelation from the architect of those cosmic cycles, it should logically reflect the very same cosmic blueprint. Let us look at the Arabic word for a single day. Yawm. If you take a digital copy of the Quran and run a search algorithm to count every single time the singular word yawm appears, excluding the plural forms, the counter reveals a number that should startle anyone who understands astronomy. The singular word day appears in the Quran exactly 365 times. The exact number of days it takes for planet Earth to complete 1 full revolution around the sun. An astronomical fact that was completely irrelevant and unmeasurable to a 7th century desert civilization operating purely on a lunar calendar of 354 days. The text mirrors the solar cycle of the planet, even though the people receiving it did not use a solar calendar. Now, let us look at the plural form of time. The Arabic word for month is shahar. If you count every single time the word month appears across all 30 chapters of the text, the final number locks perfectly at 12. The exact number of months in a calendar year, but the complexity multiplies when you look at the word for a plural collection of days, ayam. The Quran does not just use the number 365 for a single day. If you search for the plural word days, it appears exactly 30 times. The exact average number of days within a single month. Let us pause and consider the scale of this design. If a human author wanted to sneak these astronomical numbers into a book, they would have to strictly limit themselves. If they were writing a story and realized they needed to use the word day 1 more time to make a sentence sound beautiful, they would have to refuse, because adding that 1 word would ruin the magic number of 365. The entire narrative flow, the poetry, the lore, and the historical accounts of the book would be completely held hostage by a mathematical restriction. Yet, when you read the Quran, the prose flows effortlessly. It is widely regarded as the pinnacle of Arabic literary eloquence. The numbers do not choke the literature, and the literature does not compromise the numbers. They exist in absolute, organic harmony. As modern science advanced into the 20th and 21st centuries, humanity finally developed the technology required to map the physical composition of our planet. Through satellite mapping and advanced geography, Scientists calculated the exact distribution of mass on the surface of the Earth. The results are universally known. Our planet is a water world. Approximately 71.11% of the Earth's surface is covered by oceans, seas, and rivers, while the remaining 28.89% consists of solid land masses, islands, and continents. 14 centuries before satellites ever left the atmosphere, the Quran dropped a subtle geographic equation into its vocabulary. Let us look at the word al-bahr, which translates to the sea, or large bodies of water. Throughout the entire text, this word is repeated exactly 32 times. Now, let us look at the word al-bahr, which translates to solid land or earth. This word is repeated across the chapters exactly 13 times. If we treat these two word counts as a planetary ratio, a stunning mathematical miracle unfolds. Let us do the basic arithmetic. 32 plus 13 gives you a total baseline of 45. If you calculate the percentage of the word sea within that baseline, 32 divided by 45, multiplied by 100, the result is exactly 71.11%. And if you calculate the percentage of the word land, 13 divided by 45, multiplied by 100, the result is exactly 28.89%. The word frequencies inside the text do not merely match human language, they match the physical geography of the planet itself. How could an ancient text, spoken by a man living in a landlocked desert environment, who had never seen an ocean mapping tool, accurately encode the exact planetary ratio of water to land, down to the second decimal place? While the text maps out the macrocosm of our planet and the solar system, it simultaneously dives into the microscopic reality of our own biology. For thousands of years, humanity did not understand how a child was formed. Ancient civilizations believed that the traits of a child came entirely from one parent or were dictated by mystical elements. It wasn't until the late 19th and 20th centuries, with the invention of high-powered microscopes, that geneticists discovered chromosomes, the dense threads of DNA that contain the blueprints for human life. We now know that every healthy human being is built using exactly 46 chromosomes. These chromosomes do not appear out of thin air. They are a perfect combination of two equal halves. 23 chromosomes are contributed by the father's seed, and 23 chromosomes are contributed by the mother's egg. Long before the science of genetics existed, the linguistic grid of the Quran mapped out this biological blueprint using the exact same numerical data. Let us look at the frequency of human gender terms within the text. If you count every single mention of the word man, the counter ticks up and locks perfectly at 23. And when you count every single mention of the word woman, the counter mirrors it instantly, locking perfectly at exactly 23. 23 pairs from each gender. Combined, they create the number 46, the absolute code for human creation. Think about the sheer statistical precision required here. To maintain this balance, the author could never mention a story about a specific historical man or woman. If it pushed the word count to 24, every legal text, every moral parable, and every ancestral lineage described across 600 pages had to be mathematically throttled to ensure that the words man and woman never deviated from the number 23. The text is literally encoded with the chromosome count of the very readers turning its pages. we are left with a profound logical dilemma. If this book was authored by a human being in the 7th century, we must accept a series of impossible premises. We must believe that an unlettered desert orator managed to track dozens of antonyms across a 23-year timeline, balancing them down to the single digit. We must believe that he knew the exact ratio of water to land mass on Earth, centuries before global exploration. We must believe he encoded the solar calendar despite using a lunar one, anticipated the exact chromosome pairing of human genetics, and strategically aligned text to match a universal mathematical constant. To do all of this simultaneously, without a single error, while producing the most eloquent piece of literature in the history of the Arabic language, defies every known law of human capability. The mathematical matrix of the Quran is not a decoration. It is a signature. It is a message left within the structure of the language, waiting for an era of computers and advanced science to unlock it and read it clearly. It stands as a silent, unshakable proof that the book you are holding did not come from the mind of a man. It came from the architect of the cosmos. Will they not then reflect? If the numbers within the text are intentional, then the physical geography mentioned within it must hold an even deeper level of design. In mathematics, art, and architecture, there's a number known as phi, or the golden ratio, 1.618. It is a mathematical constant found throughout nature. It dictates the spiral pattern of galaxies, the curve of a nautilus shell, the layout of sunflower petals, and the proportions of the human body. Leonardo da Vinci used it to create masterpieces, because the human eye naturally perceives the golden ratio as the absolute pinnacle of visual perfection and balance. If you want to find the exact golden ratio point of planet Earth, you have to run a geographic calculation. You take the total distance between the North Pole and the South Pole, and you divide it by the distance from the North Pole to your target location. When geographers plug the global coordinate grid into this formula, they discover a shocking reality. The exact pinpoint coordinate that represents the golden ratio point of the entire planet is the city of Mecca, specifically, the site of the Kaaba. Now, let us look at the Quran. The city of Mecca is mentioned explicitly by name in Surah Ali Imran. If you take this specific verse and count the total number of letters from the very beginning of the sentence up until the word Mecca, you get exactly 29 letters. If you then count the total number of letters in the entire verse from start to finish, you get exactly 47 letters. If you divide the total number of letters in the verse by the letters preceding the name of the holy city, 47 divided by 29, the mathematical result is 1.62, the golden ratio. The text does not just describe Mecca as a sacred center in words. It places the name of Mecca at the exact mathematical golden ratio point of the verse itself, perfectly mirroring the physical location of the city on the canvas of the globe.